World Financial Group offers entrepreneurs from all backgrounds the opportunity to start their own business on a level playing field. Dr. Yana Woodhouse, receiving the WCM Wall Street Pioneer Award by the United Black Wall Street of America, Inc., is one of those entrepreneurs.
I see WFG and TFA as a place where African Americans with an entrepreneurial mindset can flourish. And the bonus, we help families and serve the communities across the country.
To learn more about us, go to worldfinancialgroup.com.
We are the sons and daughters of the soul. We are resilient and forever forward-thinking. We ask for nothing else than the opportunity to live and to create the lives that we were meant to live. We want nothing but an equal chance at options and possibilities. The same possibilities and options to live out our potential as our fellow man. We want to be heard, understood, and expressive in our reality. We are the future. We are the creative. We are here.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
Good afternoon. This is Tony Rogers, your host for Urbanology, The Art of War. Hope all is well today. It's kind of a brisky Tuesday, but, brisk is what happens in November. We tend to have a different type of weather focus. Matter of fact, tomorrow, it may be in the 60s. So this is one of those interesting times where you have to be careful, make sure your immune system is strong, because you can be vulnerable for cold based on the change in temperatures, the different types of changes in temperatures, actually. You go out in the morning and it's cool, and then by the afternoon it's warm, and then by the evening you're cool again. So you have to be careful. But again, welcome to the Urbanology Show. One of the joys of being able to do urbanology virtually is the ability to have people from all over the world on your show, and from wherever you are. You don't have to be at home. Matter of fact, my partner, Matt McCoy, who's producing the show, is on his way to Harlem to attend the Holiday Lights, the 125th Street, that will take place about 6 o'clock. So based on technology, you can actually produce a show on your phone in transit, which is an interesting jump from where we were even 10, 20 years ago. Well, definitely 20 years ago, but even 10 years ago, if you told someone that you were going to produce a TV show live on your phone while you were in the car, they would kind of look at you as crazy, wondering what type of science fiction movies you're looking at. But as we start to progress, many things, 5 years from now, even what we're doing now may seem old-fashioned. So the way time is moving so rapidly, especially in technology. We won't know what's science fiction and what's fiction anymore, because what may be fiction today is a part of science tomorrow. One of the joys, and we hope that the technology will allow for this to happen, is I have a guest today that's been a part of my life for many, many years, since I was a student at the City College of New York, Dr. Lynn Jefferies, who, when I was there, was the chairman of the Black Studies Department at City College. And it was a very interesting experience. I not long ago had another friend that was part of my City College experience with Professor James Smalls. And both James and I were students at that time. And I first ran into James Smalls when I was, before I actually got to City College, when I came out of the service, I was in the Panther Party, and used to sell newspapers on the campus. And James was a freshman there. He was the head of the student body, and he was telling me, trying to tell me why I couldn't do that. And I was trying to argue with him as to, how can you get into the people's way? People mean the power to the people. And so eventually, once I got to the school, I began to understand certain things a little better, and we became close. And he invited me to a workshop at the Black Studies Department. Dr. Van Sonema and Dr. Ben were the speakers. And it was so enlightening about Egypt and the things. I was a philosophy major and doing pretty well. And the reason why I was doing well is that philosophy seemed to be a subject that I was able to get a good understanding about. And I wasn't sure why. Many of the younger students, especially in philosophy, were not of color, and they were having a little difficult time. I was much older, just coming out of, the service, and for some reason, I just kind of got it. And when I was explaining that to Dr. Jefferies and Smalls, that's when they said, "You need to come and hear about where all of that stuff that you're learning with the Greeks, about where that really came from. And then you understand where your spiritual connection really came from." And that was an enlightening experience. I began to understand about, ancient Kemet to a greater degree than I had ever before. And over the years, it pretty much allowed for me to do what I try to do now, and will be a lifelong journey for me, is to bring people into the understanding of where we are, where we were from, and perhaps even with those two things, where we may be going. So hopefully technology will work for us, and we will be able to bring Dr. Smalls on. I'm doing what is called fillings time. So I did not necessarily have anything prepared other than being as transparent as possible. So without going on and on, I'm just trying to, keep things going until we can tune into Dr. Smalls, and hopefully uh, it will be of interest. As I had mentioned before, Matt McCoy and Jasmine Pfeiffer are on their way to be a part of the Harlem uh, Lights program. Every year, the 125th Street bid for a number of years have created a way to open up the holiday season with lights from 12th Avenue all the way over to, I believe it goes to Lexington. And there are floats, and it's it started out modest, but now it has grown and grown based on the new businesses that have come into Harlem. And it's called the Harlem Lights, and it's been a very interesting program. The history of that, many years ago, there was a brother that was in the community. His name was Raleigh Bell. And Raleigh was, a brother who made his living in the community, but had a great desire to do things. And one year he said, we got to bring lights back to 125th Street. This was at least 20, 25 years ago. And he asked Lloyd and I. Lloyd was, at that time, Lloyd Williams was the vice president of the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce. It was the Uptown Chamber of Commerce at that time. And I, to see what we can do in order to do that, because on during the holidays, Raleigh would raise money from the merchants and have a major event at the Harlem State Office building, where he would give away toys and all kinds of gifts to needy families. Before it was something that people were doing, he was doing that. And he wanted to, have a Christmas tree in the plaza, which again, the first Christmas tree in the plaza was based on contributions from Raleigh Bell and some of the other people who he were able to get to raise money to do that. And he wanted to help put lights on 125th Street. So I never forget, Lloyd and I went to a location in Jersey, and we created a deal where we would have lighting from 125th Street and St. Nicholas to 125th Street and Malcolm X Boulevard. And it wasn't as extravagant as it is now, but it was lights, and those lights were in conjunction to the tree that Raleigh was able to purchase. The tree was a tree. It wasn't as some of the trees that we see now, but it was put up by community individuals who wanted to do something. So the spirit of it was greater than anything else, and that was that was the first time in many years that there was lighting in a tree on 125th Street. So those are some historic things that that's interesting to know. I mean, years before that, when Bloomstein's was around and A.J. Lester's and a number of other major stakeholders on 125th Street. There were also lighting during the holidays, but around the 60s, when many of these stores and businesses started to access Harlem, a lot of that fell by the wayside. Even when we were developing our project under the guidance and support of Raleigh Bell and a number of other people, he was able to get elected officials and business persons. There wasn't a lot of businesses on 125th Street because we hadn't reached that point of revitalization yet, but there were a few. And 125th Street was, and as is now, a major gateway, and created the situation where we were able to do something that was really based on pulling the community together, and there was a greater sense of community at that time, and we don't really have that now as it relates to that type, even though there is, as I had mentioned before, the 125th Street bid has did a wonderful job as far as getting businesses together and community-based organizations together. The state, thanks to Curtis Archer and the Harlem Development Corporation, have been involved, as long as and a number of other sponsors. So there is a type of unity and coming together as it relates to what's happening. But if you go on 125th Street after this evening, I think it's about 7:30, or it starts between 6 and 7, and there will be a countdown. And for the rest of the holidays, 125th Street will have wonderful lights. And there will be, if you're listening to this and you still have time, there will be other activities. Many of the different stores along the strip, 125th Street, west to east, will have different types of, giveaways and things of the like. The Harlem Community News has done a number of marketing ads and stories about this. The current edition of it has the actual route and some of the places that you might be able to see. But it's an economic development component, and it has, like many other things, to do with creating, utilizing tourism as a tool in order to create economic development. There has been a major thrust in order to, again, use tourism to help New York City and New York State come back alive. And years ago, when we started Harlem Week through the vision of Percy E. Sutton, tourism was the major foundation of those things, that program, which was Harlem Day at that time in 1974. But it continued to be that driving force. In 1979, we created the first map of Harlem, not the first map of Harlem, the first map of the new Harlem, let's say. In 1974, we labeled that Harlem Day as the beginning of the second Harlem Renaissance. And so in 79, the map showed it was almost 80 different locations, which surprised a lot of people because many people saw Harlem as a burnt out community. Matter of fact, 42nd Street wasn't doing well, so you could understand the issues of Harlem. But nevertheless, under the leadership of the Honorable Percy E. Sutton, who was at that time the borough president in '74. Tourism, not only for the city but for the state, became a major economic development tool to bring the city out of despair and actually bankruptcy. Recently, new governor, Kathy Hochul, just made an announcement that the state has put together a major tourism program. I think it's $460 million for different types of activities throughout the city and urban areas for businesses and that are tourism related to get much needed financing to start up again, as the pandemic created a number of issues, especially as relates to businesses that had a direct relationship with tourism. One of the things that a lot of people do not really understand is that there are so many indirect relationships to tourism and the tourism industry that when we create that type of activity, whether it's hotels, whether it's restaurants, which are more obvious, but beauty parlors, the corner stores, when you have an influx of people coming into a particular area, it creates, an economic windfall if it's managed and things are done correctly, which is one of the things that over the years, whether it's through the Greater Harlem Chamber or the Harlem Tourism Board or Harlem Park to Park or many of the other organizations, have tried to create certain events, certain types of activities, and work with the various restaurants. Matter of fact, Harlem Restaurant Week is coming up, and again, I believe it starts on December the 7th. And if you pick up the Harlem Community News this week's issue, it talks about that. But tourism is and will be, for New York City and for the rest of the world in many cases, wherever that could be worked out within locations in the world, tourism has always been a way to bring much needed capital into particular areas that had something that people want to come to see. We are looking forward believe now between April and May to have a major Marriott hotel on 125th Street, which would be part of the Lowe's project. The name of the hotel is the Marriott Harlem Renaissance Hotel. And I think that's a very interesting name because we, as I had mentioned before, are in the second Harlem Renaissance. The first Harlem Renaissance brought so much culture and literature and other types of things to the world that came out of this magical community known as Harlem. And the second Harlem Renaissance with Harlem Week, which has led the way, is including the labeling of 1974. August of 1974 was the beginning of the second Harlem Renaissance. And the pandemic had its effect on all programs, including Harlem Week. And in 2019, it went virtual. Many of us, including myself, had to learn a new type of way to communicate, which is what we're doing now virtually. And one of the things that happened, however, is that it enhanced the numbers of people who could be able to understand about programs such as Harlem Week. And this year, the, the the interesting thing that came about was that based on being both virtual, I guess it was a hybrid. It was Harlem Week was virtual as well as in person. And based on the reports that we received, Harlem Week received 1.6 billion images or impressions, as they call it. So that means people throughout the world were able to see and understand what was going on in Harlem and some of the recovery and some of the programs and some of the history and all of those things. So with programs now to be in place like Soul City, which keeping fingers crossed and eyes dotted, will have the first broadcast studio network broadcast studio in Harlem, and new hotel that's coming in and a number of other things. So there will be a number of ways to take advantage of that $46 million that the state is beginning to put together to encourage tourism. Harlem will, I'm sure, be in line in order to create programs that will allow for the continuation of the Harlem Renaissance to be realized. And there's so many different types of things that are happening. I'm checking, no word yet with my dear beloved Dr. J, so I have to keep dancing. December, and if I'm not mistaken, and I have to correct it by next week, December, the first Sunday in December will be the date of the annual Double Dutch competition that will take place at the Apollo Theater. Again, last year it was not, it had to go virtual, but if you have not had the opportunity to see the Double Dutch competitions, it is something that's extremely entertaining. It's not like the Double Dutch that you used to see on the block. Now you have to be an athlete in order to do some of the things that these young people do. Matter of fact, in Japan, there's a national Double Dutch team that travels, and they come to Harlem, and they've won a number of times because they're paid to just do that. And they compete with schools that have Double Dutch teams and the like from all over the world. And as I mentioned, the pandemic limited a lot of that travel from places as far away as Africa to come in and do their routines and their competition. The idea of Double Dutch has grown so that the Japanese are to introduce it at the Olympics in Japan. And it is reaching the point where that will happen. And it's kind of interesting that a game that started out on the block will reach to a point where it will become part of the Olympic competition. And that was started by actually a Harlem police officer, David Walker, who actually created two programs over 40 years ago. It was the Double Dutch competition is at least about 30 years. And the other Father's Day cycling classic that he created will celebrate its 50th year this Father's Day. That's a race around Montmartre Park. And again, he was a detective, community affairs detective, and he created two programs that not only have they existed over time, but have grown to international programs. And all of these things, I guess getting back to the foundation of it, all these things have to do with tourism. And there are so many different types of opportunities still as relates to the tourism industry, especially as many cities, especially in urban areas, start to come back. But Harlem, Harlem has always been seen as the black capital of the United States. You're walking through the block now, it may be the UN capital of the United States because there's so many different ethnicities here. But that was always the case too. I mean, coming up, growing up, I mean, it was the Irish, it was the Italians, it was many of the immigrants who were kicked uptown after they started redoing the Five Points area and putting in, different types of structures, Penn Station and the like. But it was ethnically mixed. And again, on Amsterdam Avenue, it was Irish, it was Jewish, and it was Italian over on East Harlem. And, many different types of ethnic groups have always called Harlem their home. However, based on the second and the first Harlem Renaissance, the first in particular, Harlem became known as the Black capital based on the popularity of the literature, the history, and many of the figures that came from that era. And it's an honor to be able to carry to keep that type of history alive, to be on shows like Soul City, which is a nationally televised TV station, or on-demand station broadcast network that is fully Black owned, which is the only one of its kind in this industry. And to be here and to be a part of the possible opening up of actual broadcast station and studio in Harlem is again an interesting continuum, because that in itself also allows for the concept of tourism, people coming to this area to spend dollars and to enjoy the culture, the history of this community, which has had an interesting history. It has been here for it's part of New York. There's a lot of interesting historic relationships as relates to what has taken place in Harlem over the years, over the centuries, actually. And once we begin to actually come back together, there are going to be, at least that I know of, at least 3 to 4 museums that will be in this community also. Museums that will talk about fashion and historic components that will complement, of course, the Schomburg, which was created during this first Harlem Renaissance. Principal figure was Arthur Schomburg, and it actually created a different narrative, which is one of the major components of Soul City, to allow for us to create our own narrative, because for so long we had to focus on someone else's narrative about who we were. And actually, much of that is still here. But as we begin to see the Soul Cities and many of the other components, we'll be able to create our own narrative and tell our story rather than his story. And that's very important, because as we start to move, and it's hard to say, as I had mentioned at the top of the show, what's happening tomorrow may be different from the next day, and definitely probably not what is happening right today. So that's how fast time is moving, and we have to record it. One of the things that I have attempted to do and will continue to do with the Urbanology show on Soul City is to talk with people who were really, as far as my understanding of the Second Harlem Renaissance, very influential, such as Dr. Jefferies. And if we don't get a chance to get him on today, we will definitely circle back, because he's a very important person to hear from as relates to some of the things that he's been able to accomplish and to see, and to be able to give information about, as far as his trips to Africa and the like. And a lot of our programming can be found on the Facebook page of the Harlem Tourism Board, as well as the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce's Facebook page, depending on what the subject matter is. One other exciting thing that we're working on, and hopefully, really before, I think we have one more show. No, actually, before the holidays really come in, we'll be able to announce the Harlem Tourism Board's trip to Senegal. We're in the process of trying to look at the dates of the Senegalese Jazz Festival, which takes place in June. By actually next week, we'll have a better understanding of what those dates are. But to allow for people to be able to understand how we can start reconnecting our roots, people of color, especially those who who have ancestors who are part of the African diaspora that was brought here as slaves about 400 to 500 years ago, and to become the ability, have the ability to return on our own, under our own control, and to perhaps even create a way of reconnecting the dots, and to develop business opportunities both for many of the African countries and for those who, the Africans who are still here. And that, as far as going into twilight time of my years, would be one of the things that I would like to accomplish, to be a part of that reconnecting. That is pretty much how the Second Harlem Renaissance should begin to play its role as being so connected to the African experience in urban America, and to be the representation of the African experience in urban America. It's fitting, in my view, for it to take the lead in reconnecting African Americans to Africans. And those are the things that will be able to be recorded in many cases on Soul City. So in years to come, there will be documentation of how things happen. Right now, when you look at, let's say, 125th Street, many newcomers kind of feel that it was based on their coming that things have changed, which was not necessarily the case. There wasn't a lot of people coming in 1974. And without the opportunity of doing what we're doing now, a lot of that history and a lot of those people will be lost in some cases, which is the whole idea of putting as many people, recording as many people, creating our own narrative of history so that there won't be a question as to how certain things took place, to be able to have those who are still around who had an understanding of what it was then and what it is now, to speak on it. And it's so, it's just a blessing to be in a position to allow for people to understand that. I learned many years ago from a person who I admired and was a mentor to me and a number of others, the Honorable Percy Sutton, that he indicated that, communication, newspapers, television, radio, in order to begin to get your message out, you need to have some sort of way to communicate to those who are like-minded or those who
There's a microphone down at the bottom. Just
now,
tap it and make sure it's on. If there's a red line going through it, it's not on.
I think that what you're hearing is Dr. J trying to get on, even though we, may not have that much time. We're going to probably have to have him do this again. Technology as it is, as wonderful as it is, there is a tendency to have glitches, especially when you're doing it live. And no matter what platform you are doing live technology on, you have to have plan A and plan B. So happened today, I was plan B, but hopefully we'll be able to get some of it in today as relates to talking with Dr. J. I mean, that can be a conversation that can be a whole series of shows, actually, as relates to, let's say, from, the early 60s coming up until now. So we'll see how that works itself out. There is a saying that all things happen for a reason, and all things are beneficial. So hopefully, again, for those who may be in tourism-related businesses, you might want to investigate the upcoming 2022 New York State initiatives to promote tourism-related activities in New York. And if you're in an urban area such as Harlem, there may be opportunities there. So those are some of the things that you might be able to talk about. At some point, we have to also, in 2022, revisit the cannabis legalization for New York State. Some of the infrastructure budgets and all of those things kind of took precedent, but in 2022, I think that's going to come back up again. So we'll work about that also. So there are a lot of different types of things that that will take place, and I hope that many of you who are looking will be able to continue to join the Urbanology show. Next week, I'm 90% sure that I have one of my close friends, Jamal Joseph, Professor Jamal Joseph, who met Jamal many years ago when we were in the Panther Party together. And Jamal has an incredible story. Matter of fact, he has a book, Panther Baby, which is really worth reading. But, he again is now in the media. He was the co-chair or chair of the graduate film and video department at Columbia University. And I know he's working on a number of projects now, so we'll talk about that in upcoming sessions. I also, in December, or at least the first of the year, I look to have Vandi Curtis Hall on. Vandi is a producer, a professor at NYU, and has been very influential in TV and film, as well as his wife, Casey. Harriott was the latest project that they worked on, and they're doing some other things now too. So, there are a lot of interesting things, and one of the wonderful things that has happened is that Soul City has provided a platform to record and document these individuals. And as we talk in time to, in the future about the second Harlem Renaissance, we will be able to actually point out and document and show those figures who played a role then and now as it relates to keeping the flame alive for one of the most well-known urban communities in the world. And so I'm pretty sure you're going to be stuck with me because we only have a couple of more minutes to go on. But I promise you, those who wanted to hear Dr. J, and I wanted to hear him too, because every time I talk with him, he comes up with some new great information that I had no knowledge of. And that's a wonderful thing. But we will have him back. If you are listening to this and you're in the New York metropolitan area, you might want to make your way to 125th Street, because between 6 and 8, there will be a lot of activities between 12th Avenue and Lexington Avenue as the 125th Street starts to prepare for the holiday season. And those are some of the updates that I can think of at the moment as I'm trying to keep, the curtains from closing. But it may seem that Sandman may be coming in pretty soon with his hook for me to let me know that it's time for me to make my departure.
I'm not sure I understand.
I'm not sure that I understand either. that, that's my phone. I was just trying to check to see whether or not we were going to get at least a hello from Dr. J, but it may not be that way for today. And again, we will have him back, not before the end of the year, but maybe soon, because he has, especially for those who might not have had the opportunity to listen or to hear him, he has a wealth of information. He is a historical figure, an elder, and when we get him to come back, we'll make sure that we let everyone know, let all our listeners know, so that they can tune in. And of course, if you miss the show, we usually, I'm not sure about this particular one, but usually we put our shows up on the Harlem Tourism Board Facebook page, as well as all of our business-related programming on the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce's Facebook page. But I guess that's really pretty much it. We have talked about some of the upcoming events. There will be in December, and I'll probably have those dates, if not next week, at least the week after that, which will be around the first week in December. But before the actual holidays begin, the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce will have a virtual membership meeting just to bring people up to date with some of the things that are taking place, the opening of the hotel, Marriott, some of the things that Soul City is working on, as well as some of the plans. Harlem Holistic Wellness Week is one that is the last Saturday in April to the first Saturday in May. I do know that Soul City will again be in Tulsa, Oklahoma, during the Black Friday concept of Black Wall Street, I should say, concept that started a few years ago, but became bigger last year. And now with Matt McCoy and Soul City involved, there will be a lot of activities and workshops and entertainment going around the end of May. I think it's May 31st to June 1st, something like that. So all of those things we'll give updates as we get close to them, and we'll make sure that you're aware of it. And I want to thank Matt McCoy for giving us a platform. And I will, God willing, see you next week. So this is Tony Rogers, ending a little early because I'm pretty sure you guys are pretty much done with me doing my song and dance activities. But I hope that I've been able to give you some information that would be helpful to you. And until next week, enjoy the rest of this week, and you take care. Take care. This is Tony Rogers signing off.
We are the sons and daughters of the soul. We are resilient and forever forward-thinking. We ask for nothing else than the opportunity to live and to create the lives that we were meant to live. We want nothing but an equal chance at options and possibilities. The same possibilities and options to live out our potential as our fellow man. We want to be heard, understood, and expressive in our reality. We are the future. We are the creative. We are here.